WESN.
One of my beliefs is that you can tell a lot about a situation by examining the extreme ends, because a principle should not necessarily require you to have a certain amount of flexibility to judge situations based on its merits. A principle is something that you should apply equally at all times. It's on principle. When you have a situation where I understand you might have practical justification for doing X, but I must disagree with you on principle. I must disagree with killing people on principle, even if they were convicted of murder, and that's what the law of the land says. Some people will have that position. Others will say, I know you want to be compassionate, but my principles are repeat offenders with regards to murder should not be given a chance to repeat that offense for a third time. If you want to apply proportionality, then is it a principle? That's why things like racism and not being racist, being someone willing to look past any sort of racial difference, skin color difference, religious difference, political allegiance difference, gender difference, sexual preference difference. To me, that is a principle thing. What you do does not then determine how much of your demographics I look past or how much of it I judge. I just don't judge at all, because that's the principle. So when now we reach the point where people wanted to see a tougher on-stance crime, people wanted to see more help from the defense force for the police service on the streets, people wanted to see the gloves taken off, people were wanting the stand your ground law. And in all those cases, there was some version of me saying, be careful, because if it goes too far, it won't be normal, it won't be criminal, sorry, that will be the victims. It will be other people, normal people. Be careful, you look past. It's not about defending the criminals. And when you would say some of these things, why are you defending the criminals? I'm not defending the criminals. It's about the people who would unintentionally be caught up in that situation. If you're not careful with how police procedures are outlined, you can get victimization, even if the police don't intend to do it. Because the system, if it has flaws, if it's allowed to have flaws, this will happen. If aggression is allowed to go unabated in the criminal justice system, this could happen. And people will, in my opinion, want to take our law enforcement and what the Americans are doing and say, no, those are two very, very, very different things. And I say, no, they're not. They're not. The Americans, what they're doing, that's just a more extreme example. Because if you listen to what I say very carefully, I'm very consistent. Zone of peace this, zone of peace that. Venezuela has not been attacked as a nation. The US didn't declare war on Venezuela. Venezuela does not claim those boats. They try to say it's Trinidadian smugglers smuggling stuff into their country. They don't acknowledge their people smuggling stuff into ours? I have said this is a question about law enforcement, rules of engagement, which naval military forces have successfully applied to deal with piracy off the Somali coast. Why can't they do that here? And the questions with regards to the American action should be based on that. The use of force policy and how legal is it? And now 2 Trinidadians have died. And there will be cynics who will say, well, we don't know what they're involved in. And listen, I don't have any evidence one way or the other. So I can't say that that's not a valid question. It will be an insensitive one, but it will technically, on a very strict technical level, be one that you can ask. I myself don't necessarily even care about that right now. Because the possibility that they are completely innocent, and yet they were killed. Why? Do the parents want to hear wrong place, wrong time? We don't know if it was a drug boat or if it was some other kind of boat. Some smuggler decide, I'll take this contract to get people across, not understanding, hey, there's some trigger-happy people right now, if they didn't notice. Regardless, this is a situation where America feels justified, based on their laws, to do what they do. Just because we think it isn't right doesn't mean that it might not actually be legal based on their laws. And then, of course, you have to ask about international treaties, which is what international law basically is. We don't know. I haven't necessarily heard of a judge, whether it is an American judge or an international judge, speak on the matter. But it seems as though they think they're legally justified. And if you don't like the outcome, that is essentially not just with regards to this situation, but this is what aggressive action taken to the extreme looks like. It is a shoot first, ask questions later, essentially. And if you want to think that philosophically it won't more or less be the same if we encourage our criminal justice system to be more aggressive, putting the army on the streets, this is why I say, because some people might say, well, there's a navy. They're not trained to arrest. They could be. They could be. You do have military police. You can do special training for specific missions, but you don't want to see a military force be doing, they do, but we want our army and Coast Guard to essentially do law enforcement functions. So how is it that we expect our defense force, unless you're saying it's not a defense force, unless you're saying that they're not actually doing their mission, or they have no mission, so we're just roping them into the TTPS, which I don't necessarily know how proper that is really, regardless of the legality. What's the point of having a defense force if it's meant to just be a reserve police force? Then scrap the defense force and put everybody in the police force and let them get proper police training. But you want to unleash military people on our crime problem? This is what could happen. That is the extreme, but that's why, not that you don't do it, but you don't do it willy-nilly. You don't do it as though, there's no big deal, we just send out the soldiers and then they'll rough up the gangsters and they'll, no. Because what's been happening recently, haven't we seen an upsurge in police fatal shootings? So now the question is, how much transparency do we have that we could be certain that all of those shootings were above board? Because one of the issues I have with this, for every trainer that wants to complain about what the Americans are doing, that's nice. What about our own people on our own soil? And I'm not saying the police are wrong for doing it. I'm just saying, you want to tell me that you could guarantee every single one is above board? They all could be above board, But how do we know that? Well, we don't care. We don't care. But the Americans, they go after somebody else. Oh my gosh. It is such a travesty to us. In fact, I do wonder if we kind of blew our load of emotions on the previous attacks, and now that Trinis actually have been killed, I don't even know if the public has enough to give anymore, which is sad. Meanwhile, you go along with whatever Mama Guy and international political slogan is bandied about that makes you feel better. Principles don't care about emotions. They're principles. As much as I want the international help, as much as I do see that there are benefits to the Americans intervening in transnational drug smuggling, I always question the legality of it. And I've always pointed out, for those people that want more aggressive action, why are you complaining now? This is what it looks like if taken to the logical extreme. This is why I caution against it. And now we're seeing it both internationally, but also potentially domestically. And we're barely even talking about the domestic side. And as long as they don't have body cameras and reveal a responsible amount of footage, they don't have to give us everything. We don't have to see all the gory details, and we don't have to compromise investigations. But we have to have enough mechanisms in place, whether footage is released, or there's a bipartisan committee, or an independent committee, or something, and not the current structure. The PSB, the PCA, for various reasons, PCA is a toothless tiger. They could barely do anything. And it's not necessarily all their fault for that. The PSB, that's a whole mess on its own. Whole mess. There's a lot that is desired. It's just that not a lot of us necessarily know that we desire it just yet. Why do I say that? If you look in the news today, you would see reporting on one incident. A father and son were shot. They survived. They were both injured. I think the son is 9 years old. Seemed like a home invasion situation that has that whole community reeling. But then there's another situation, at least in one of the daily newspapers, they also pointed to another situation where young men were attacked, 2 minors were injured, and 2 young 20-year-olds, I believe, were killed. And in that report, there's multiple accounts of parents who are concerned about the safety of their children, because now in their communities, they feel even less safe because they have examples of children going to the same school as theirs that got shot and injured. Regardless of if it's outsiders coming in to conduct mischief, if it's people looking to kill criminals and kids getting away. One of the comments from a resident of that community, of one of those communities affected, basically said, it's like if there's no code. It's like if they don't care anymore. Things are out of control, which is not surprising. One could argue we could have said this a year or 2 ago. But that's what's going on right now when murder rates are down. The issue is we can't actually say to a reasonable degree what are the factors accurately that is affecting the murder rates. So politically, because this is what not just the UNC current administration, but the previous PNM administration, and to some extent, it is not entirely their fault, but it is potentially irresponsible. You just politically, for political expedience, you take the low-hanging fruit. Well, we're in power and things drop, so it's all thanks to us, we did it. How did you do it? How did the state of emergency do it? How did the new police commissioner's initiatives do it? What was the effect of the previous acting commissioner and his initiatives? What did that have on it? The previous SOE, and so on and so on. Explain it to us in detail, otherwise they're blowing smoke. There was an effect. I mean, you could say the same thing about the SOE at the beginning of the year with the PNM. They just, oh, murder rate is down. That's nice. What does that mean? The police itself goes on to say, murder rate not important, murder rate not important. Then when the murder rate down, oh, look at us, the murder rate is down. At least some of these speakers, not the media ambassadors. Is crime better? Or did we have multiple factors that impacted things and it might impact again? I hope that we don't see an upsurge in violent crime. But I've been told, don't be surprised if there's an upsurge in violent crime. Christmas is around the corner. Carnival is around the corner. And if drug dealers don't have drug money to spend during those times, they will be tempted to find that money elsewhere. And it's not September, and it's not June. It's not quiet periods in the year coming up. It is the heaviest time of the year when people want to have money. Now, the chief of the defense force, he was promoted. Not just, of course, there's a new chief, but he was promoted to commodore. This is obvious to me. The chief of the defense force is a flag rank position. The heads of service are what I believe NATO would basically call 06. That is to say a colonel in a land force or a captain in a naval force. And there are two new heads of the regiment and the Coast Guard, who was, I believe, subsequently promoted to those ranks. Head of the defense staff is now a commodore. This change, there's two things about it. I can criticize potentially, did you do the right procedure to make the change? Although it seems that it did. So then it comes down to, is it appropriate to do it during a state of emergency? Now, we don't necessarily have the reasons why, so it's difficult to judge, but given the lack of results, for the last, I don't know how many years that we've had this staff running defense force, that we've had questions with regards to what does the regiment do? What does the Coast Guard do? We don't say them nothing. The only thing we've seen the Coast Guard do with regards to border security was shoot at a baby. That's basically it. Now, that might not be fair, but you know what? Blame your bosses. Blame your bosses and the politicians who are overseeing you for leaving things in that position publicly. Blame those in the service who undermine the trust and confidence of the service. Don't blame the public. Don't blame the commentators. Hopefully this change will allow for more accountability in the defense force. But I do think that Minister Sturge, Minister Alexander, the AG, the Prime Minister, they should all take a hard look. What does it mean for the regiment? What is their mission? They need a mission. It's not just to be on standby for a state of emergency to help the police. They need a mission. Otherwise, what is the point of their existence? The support battalion, you could maybe fold them into the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard at least has a mission. Are they executing that mission? Are they carrying out all of the critical missions to achieve that mission? Overall requirement to the society. Do they fulfill their role? New leadership, let's see what they got. It might not solve everything. It depends on how deep the rot is. The rot could be shallow. The rot could be ingrained. We don't know. We don't know. But we wait and see. Proactive, transparent leadership on this. Heavens forbid there is regime change and Venezuela implodes. Are we prepared for that? Can we manage that? Let's take this comment. With a poorly motivated is a walk and been trained for the last century police force, what do you expect? Yes. How much of the training is obsolete? That is a very valid point. It's a question, sorry. It's a very valid question. Poorly motivated is a walk. I suspect that to be very much the case. Too much of a critical, vocational, this is not, hey, I need a job, let me sweep a floor. This is, hey, I need a job, let me go get a badge and have the authority vested in me by the state to conduct violence if necessary. It's not the same thing, eh? I need a walk, let me go mow some grass. I need a walk, let me be given a gun and be told that I might have to use it at my discretion. Those are not the same things. But then, is it thuggery? Well, some of it can be. There have been too many questions. There have been too many questions. And the police service did themselves no favors with how they handled procurement of body cameras. If you want to get the bulletproof vest first, that's fine. It was very interesting how basic, simple downfalls in communication made or could make it look as though, hey, body cameras, that's not a priority. What we need that for? 20 million to get body cameras. I wonder what body cameras they're going to get. What is the performance of the 2,500 to 3,000 cameras? Unless they want to say, oh, but then there'll be additional costs. You don't see. All right. Let's cut it here. I'm going to come back to that point that I made at the top of the show. I'm going to come back to that point because I want to get to the debate that happened, I believe, last Friday, where we had some pretty good debating and then an example of what we don't want to see in Parliament. But before that, I have a couple other topics to get through, including, of course, maybe a little bit more pointed commentary on the whole situation of not passing the buck on to the consumers. This is not a real place, folks. Sure, Michael Small, this is Talking on the WESN Content Capital. We'll be right back after this.
The season of lights is bright and tasty with Royal Castle's delightful veggie burger made with a healthy and nutritious patty. It's great on its own or in a combo with one side and a 16-ounce drink. So whether it's lunch, dinner or a snack, Royal Castle's veggie burger fits right in with your fasting and festivities. Happy Diwali from Royal Castle.
My mom has been shopping here for the last 15 years. So coming here with her, now I have my own family.
The variety of items, cleanliness of the place, the spaciousness.
My favorite section is household.
My husband loves the hardware section and the auto section. My favorite would be stationery.
Price Club is the low price leading supermarket in TNT.
They are the best. I would recommend Price Club to anybody.
Diwali time again. Come to Prem Singh's Puja Bhavan for all your Diwali essentials. Get your clay diyas, cotton wicks, floating wicks, beautifully decorated imported diyas, and now in stock, our long-lasting, easy lighting wax diyas. Fasting? We have frozen vegetarian meals, exciting Indian spices and grocery items, decorated mithai boxes, prasad bags, freshly ground elaichi powder, and paper sohari leaves. And don't forget our popular tasty mouth-watering mithai. We have simple Diwali Puja guides on CD with a Puja handout, and our helpful staff will assist you you with all the required ingredients to perform your Diwali puja. Get great deals on lantern decorations, electric diya string lights, and Happy Diwali decorations. Visit us at the corner of Watt Street, Kirep, or at St. Ives Street, Chaguanas, opposite the Charleville taxi stand, or call 663-6084. Prem Singh's Puja Bhavan. It's a family tradition, serving the nation and Dharma. Lakshmi Mata's divine blessings to all. For your convenience, both branches are open on Sundays until Diwali.
In Hinduism, cow's milk is revered, and from the finest milk comes our ghee. When offered into the sacred fire, cow ghee carries our prayers to the deities, unlike processed vegetable ghee. From your devotion to your delicious dishes, you can trust Anchor Cow Brand Ghee. For all occasions, use the best ghee. Enjoy the best food and delicacies, and have the best Diwali with Anchor Cow Brand Ghee.
Lighting up for Diwali just got simple with the easy-to-use Anand brand wax diyas. They're scientifically engineered to last longer, burn brighter, and keep on lighting. Anand brand wax diyas do not require any prepping or filling and has less spillage and cleanup. These diyas are recommended for outdoor use and can withstand light wind and rain. Plus, they're eco-friendly. Redeem your use cases for cash back. So put some green innovation into your Diwali celebrations with Anand brand wax diyas.
I'm back here talking about the WSND Content Capital. Before I get into the whole kickback or passing on the buck to the consumer part, I do want to continue the conversation with regards to our crime situation. One of the things is, okay, we've had a glaring example of fears of violence against children, but last week, or basically, 20 people murdered, bloodiest week of the year, which is not something that would have been out of place last year. And I do wonder how much are we potentially underestimating that the murder rate could rebound very, very, very quickly. Now, one of the things that's being said, and cause and effect. Before the state of emergencies, there was consideration to gangs being more aggressive and reckless. What was the foreign influence? Potentially, did the street gangs now want to break away a bit more from the drug barons and the organized crime? And there was some opinions that crime was in a way being disorganized, and because of that disorganization, you got more reckless, aggressive, violent behavior that led to, instead of, well, it's a gang warfare situation, we killing them, they killing us. Now it's a total war situation where we're not just killing you, we're killing anybody around you because we don't care to be careful. We're not looking to try to find you alone. We're going to try and find you the most vulnerable. So if the most vulnerable is a public place and you're surrounded by 10 innocents, everybody rolling that dice, everybody taking that risk. They didn't opt into it, but that's going to happen. Now, it might be an evolution because state of emergencies. We had one, it kind of suppressed crime. Don't necessarily know fully what the effect was, but the murder rate was reduced even before the new government called their state of emergency. And their state of emergency was pointing to the fact that perhaps the leadership of the various gangs now might be looking to band together. That's what they said, a syndicate. And it made sense from the point of view that the inter-gang violence stopped. We still had murders, we still had violent crime, but gangsters killing gangsters seemingly took a back seat to alleged threats to the state. Now, the state has gone to great pains to reduce the ability for the gang leaders that have been in remand and incarcerated for whatever reason to reduce their ability to communicate with the outside world. And this has been pointed to by certain stakeholders in that field that's basically pointing the fact that, look, you've cut off the decision leaders. Great. Now you've left the gangsters on the ground level to their own devices, potentially, to some extent, right? They're not going to just wait and be paralyzed because their leader's not there. In some ways, this might be an opportunity for some of them to maybe try to get a field promotion, maybe a permanent promotion. Now, one of the things that was pointed to is the fact that we need intelligence to deal with these murders, right? And that's one of those things that's always said. But more importantly, while it might be easier for our local services, military, intelligence, police, etc., to get information and to build up a case and to get intelligence on local gang leaders, it's a whole different story. And listen, again, it's not that all migrants are criminals, but some will be. We know that they have been either the perpetrators of violent crime or the victims of violent crime. So, one of the things that's pointed out is they might be criminals. And that's the thing, when you have a situation that is not properly controlled, criminal enterprise will exploit it. Criminals might be hiding amongst the migrants. The migrants are not readily willing to tell on their own people, in part because they don't necessarily want to be in a situation where immigration is starting to go after people. You don't want to highlight who might be an illegal. If you know that they're illegal, why you didn't tell us, whatever. They don't necessarily know what our laws on what rights they may or may not have or whatever. They just don't want to deal with law enforcement. So when law enforcement now comes and say they want to deal with gangsters, and the other thing is, make no mistake, we have a low murder detection rate. Some of these migrants might be thinking, if I speak to the authorities of Trinidad and Tobago and they can't actually get the job done, I might put a target on my head. I might have to fear for my life because a Venezuelan, Colombian gangster might look to come after me. The claim is that potentially dons from Latin America are now maybe trying to get some inroads into TNT. That might be part of what's fueling the violence. Here's the catch. Usually, when you have a situation where you have criminals operating from other countries, one of the tools of modern law enforcement is to get the cooperation of said country. Not only do we have a very interesting relationship with Venezuela, so to get their cooperation, to get their intelligence on gangsters and criminals, who is who, right? With regards to these migrants and illegal migrants. Technically not the same thing, even though, yes, in this case, they're all Venezuelans. Who is who? Who is a normal citizen and who is a gangster? Well, the Venezuelan government could help with that. Do we have a good enough relationship with them to expect a reliable partnership to deal with crime? Because here's the extra layer to that. They want to say it's Trinidadian smuggling guns and explosives to Venezuela. They don't want to acknowledge the drug smuggling. They might not want to help us because they don't want to acknowledge that they have their people committing crimes in our islands. It might not be the right narrative for them, politically, internationally. Do they really care if Latin American criminals are shooting up Trinbagonian nationals? And this is one of the reasons why the situation in Venezuela, just leaving it alone, is not necessarily a healthy thing for TNT. I'm not saying regime change is going to solve anything. In the real world, there is not a option A solves everything, option B is bad. That's not how it works. You don't always get this wonderfully clear, obvious choice to make. And a lot of times, a lot of people want to make it seem as though, well, we're choosing between good and bad. No, you're usually choosing between bad and worse. And you're not always certain which one is the worst. There's no guarantees on that. What might appear to be slightly better than the other thing might actually be way worse in the long run. You can never tell how these things turn out. Gary Griffith, he pointed out, he thinks that, look, it comes down to the political will on how to deploy the defense force. And dare I say, it could even be financial will. And this is one of the things where, is this budget going to hold up on that? Because they did mention, but there was so much mentions, I can't remember the details of everything, especially when, for certain things, they weren't actually necessarily details. But can you get the Coast Guard back up? That was one of the biggest issues for national security with the previous administration. It seemed as though the Coast Guard literally did nothing. I'm not saying they did nothing, I'm saying it seemed as though. It seemed as though to people who actually witnessed illegal migrants coming on ports of entry that were not empty beaches in the darkness, but well-lit ports, legal ports. Just walking through. No muss, no fuss. But I'll get to more on this in a bit. I do want to get, at least to start off, the Minister of Finance is trying to say that, look, small increases and surcharges are meant to spread the opportunity for everyone. But at the end of the day, I do think he is underestimating our business community, or overestimating them, depends on your point of view. If you do something to essentially affect the prices of everybody, if you do that, why will they absorb it? It's across the board, so everybody will feel licensed to just pass the buck on. That's point number one. Point number two, did you analyze what their margins are? Did you analyze the margins for the entire industry, not just the richest of the rich? The assumption is that the banks could technically absorb it. Well, first of all, a big corporation like that is a very, very, very funny thing. They could be doing very well, and then they could go bankrupt. Blockbuster, Pan Am, Kodak. Look, taxi drivers say, we ain't gonna reduce fares. Right? Not much taxi drivers use super. I don't necessarily know if that's necessary, but if that's the case, if they're using premium and diesel, yeah. Right? But also, again, with the cost of living increases, they might not necessarily want to increase prices if they don't have to, but they also probably don't want to reduce fares if they don't have to either. And our public, it takes an extreme situation like the cost of tomatoes for the public to say, nah, we will just not eat tomatoes. But more often than not, what happens? They raise the price again? How they could do that? Anyway, give me 3. It could be fried chicken from a fast food outlet. It could be whatever we want from the grocery. Unless it goes too far, too fast, we'll complain about it and then buy it anyway. That is the local market. That is how our consumers operate. Why would the business community try to do anything else, especially if they might be the only one trying? Because if things go bad and they have to close their doors, who is going to cry tears for a business owner? Think about that. Who is going to potentially bail out their employees? So they have to take the long view too, and for the taxi drivers, they have to consider, hey, what is the price of maintaining cars? What are my margins? Where my margins are already tight? But the public already, I know what the demand is at this price. I don't have to drop. Why should I drop? To then now suffer with low margins again. Everybody else enjoying low price of gas. Why can't I enjoy a little bit of the low price of gas? And according to one newspaper, because this is a question with regards to the new customs duties on alcohol, beer, and tobacco, Was it foreign products or local products? Apparently, according to one newspaper, and this is what I thought could be the case or might be the case. I don't know for sure, but so again, we wait for further confirmation potentially. Increased custom duties on alcohol, beer, and tobacco will be levied on local products first, as well as imported ones. And now, again, I'm not too sure what the mechanics means, but it just means the prices of these things for the consumer will probably go up. Because for the major players, they are basically saying, hey, to what extent can we afford to do it in the long run? Because if we were in trouble again, who will bail us out? Who will cry tears for us? It's not always feasible for us to absorb costs. It changes too much of the math. But then also, they might kick the can down the road. Doesn't necessarily mean to the end user just yet, potentially, on what exactly these customs duties and et cetera are going to be affecting. It might end up then being kicked down to the retailers. And then it's up to the retailers to avoid. And they're potentially, at times, in an even less of a position to absorb costs. It all depends on their business model. Do they have too many loss leaders? Is their market share not good enough, depending on the state emergency and what have you and what have you? How much staff do they need to have? And then does it eat into their profits? It all depends. How much rent they have to pay? Do they want to take the risk of absorbing more costs? Because that's essentially what you're asking them, Minister. You're asking them, A, do us a solid and don't put the burden on the consumer. And again, you can't legislate this out because you would have to freeze prices. But then that could potentially harm whatever industry you're freezing the prices on, because what if they have to, for other reasons, increase prices? And then if you want to start freezing prices across the board, then we're a centrally planned economy. And if you think government bureaucracy could barely keep up with the responsibilities they have now, good luck with a centrally planned economy. I'll give you a hint, it never works. So, consumers shouldn't bear the brunt of tax hikes. But you haven't necessarily given the business community a reasonable enough argument as to why. The economy is volatile. Why should they bear extra risk so that your fiscal measures are more appealing to the public? And it's not that I think that the minister is, disingenuous and a actor in bad faith trying to pull one over on us. I do think in this case it's more like, did you think this through? Because at the end of the day, I did say, more than the Prime Minister even, if we want something, we might have to give up something. If you want to see expenditure for certain things that we need for development, for growth, yeah, it might mean that alcohol costs more, or cigarettes cost more, or what have you. And this is the other thing, Minister. The prices might be passed on to the consumer, and maybe that might be the last straw, and they might buy less. And then you may have damaged the money circulation in the economy because goods aren't moving. Yes, the businesses might earn more or less the same money, or the price increases are passed on to the consumer, and that slowly pushes inflation forward at a faster rate than it was before. We'll see how all of this bears out. Well, let's take a break. We'll switch gears. I want to point out something that happened about a week ago, just under a week ago, right? But we'll take another break, then we'll do that right after. Stay tuned.
season of lights is bright and tasty with Royal Castle's delightful veggie burger made with a healthy and nutritious patty. It's great on its own or in a combo with one side and a 16-ounce drink. So whether it's lunch, dinner or a snack, Royal Castle's veggie burger fits right in with your fasting and festivities. Happy Diwali from Royal Castle.
I had this accident last year, so it is more convenient for me now to move about with the cars. I can move about to the lanes properly. Here is the only place I could shop conveniently with my budget. Everything I get it here at a convenient price. I just get specials on butters and whatever, so it will be convenient for me. Their prices is very low compared to other supermarkets. It's a really nice place to shop.
In Hinduism, cow's milk is revered, and from the finest milk comes our ghee. When offered into the sacred fire, cow ghee carries our prayers to the deities, unlike processed vegetable ghee. From your devotion to your delicious dishes, you can trust Anchor Cow Brand Ghee. For all occasions, use the best ghee. Enjoy the best food and delicacies, and have the best Diwali with Anchor Cow Brand Ghee.
Lighting up for Diwali just got simple with the easy-to-use Anand brand wax diyas. They're scientifically engineered to last longer, burn brighter, and keep on lighting. Anand brand wax diyas do not require any prepping or filling and has less spillage and cleanup. These diyas are recommended for outdoor use and can withstand light wind and rain. Plus, they're eco-friendly. Redeem your use cases for cash back. So put some green innovation into your Diwali celebrations with Anand brand wax diyas.
It's Diwali time again. Come to Prem Singh's Puja Bhavan for all your Diwali essentials. Get your clay diyas, cotton wicks, floating wicks, beautifully decorated imported diyas, and now in stock, our long-lasting, easy-lighting wax diyas. Fasting? We have frozen vegetarian meals, exciting Indian spices and grocery items, decorated mithai boxes, prasad bags, freshly ground elaichi powder, and paper sohari leaves. And don't forget our popular, tasty, mouth-watering mithai. We have simple Diwali puja guides on CD with a puja handout, and our helpful staff will assist you with all the required ingredients to perform your Diwali puja. Get great deals on lantern decorations, electric diya string lights, and Happy Diwali decorations. Visit us at the corner of Watt Street, Kirep, or at St. Ives Street, Chaguanas, opposite the Charleville taxi stand, or call 663-6084. Prem Singh's Puja Bhavan. It's a family tradition serving the nation and Dharma. Lakshmi Mata's divine blessings to all. For your convenience, both branches are open on Sundays until Diwali.
To say that a justice of the peace was issuing warrants up to 2023 is to say nothing. It was wrong then, and it is wrong now. And it is wrong for this reason, Mr. Speaker. What you are doing here, Mr. Speaker, you are giving a layperson the power to issue warrants to send people into persons' homes and suspend, albeit temporarily, their constitutional rights. What I read, 2 recommendations, an ID card, a resume. They are now going to get back the power to give police officers the power to go into citizens' homes and search the homes, infringing on their constitutional rights. The power to issue search warrants was vested in the masters of the High Court for a particular reason: to appreciate the extent of these powers, considering that persons have a constitutional right under Section 4A to the enjoyment of their property. We are not saying that there will not be times when a warrant ought to be executed at premises if something untoward and illegal is going on there. What we are saying is that the persons empowered with such a privilege must at least have some judicial training, have some entrenchment in their employment so that they cannot be easily swayed, should not have the spectre of a high court judgment which deals with that sort of issue hanging over that group of persons, and that is exactly what obtains now. Where are the instances where the masters have proven to be insufficient or tardy in issuing these warrants? Or is it simply the police would like easier access without the scrutiny of a judicial officer properly trained to ensure that warrants, as was done in the Brent Thomas case according to the High Court judge, are not issued without proper oversight? We understand the need to meet the crisis of crime head on, and we agree. We understand the seriousness of the threat, and we say we would like to be part of an organized, structured approach.
So, there's a lot to unpack here, but I wanted to highlight this. Now, I heard most of his what he said in that session, right? A couple days after he said it, or the day after he made his contributions. I can't necessarily say for sure that there was nothing political that he said, but from what I heard, his points were about, is this appropriate? Here's case law. Here's why I think these precedents apply. Here's why I think it is bad. Are there examples? Show us examples of the system that we propose otherwise failing, so then we could justify this. And that even though there was pre-existing arrangements for justice of the peace to give out warrants, that it was not appropriate. And here's why. Nothing was said about the UNC this, the government that. Look at what they do. This is what they want to do. This is why they're wicked. None of that. Yes, he did say that they are there to safeguard and to be a check on society, and people might roll their eyes. But listen, that is supposed to be their job. And technically speaking, this is a new political leader with a new executive. Not everybody is there. Not everybody is there in the same roles. At some point, if we will never trust them to do their job, then the system will break down. And I'm not saying that you're supposed to just believe everything they say, but here comes at least one MP giving an argument. You don't have to agree with the argument. His argument could be 100% wrong. The point that I'm trying to make is he's giving an argument on the actual issue that they're debating and not no political back and forth. There is no, well, they want to do this so the police could do this so then they could exploit you, the people, and terrorize you. He did mention things like tyranny and stuff like that, but they were in a general sense of the word as to what could happen. He did maybe question if the police want to circumvent certain safeguards. Now, is that political or not? And then he brought up the Brent Thomas matter. But I would argue that how he did it, as much as people would say how he could say that, well, first of all, he wasn't, as far as we know, I could be wrong, I don't think he was a minister in the Ministry of National Security at the time. So, to some extent, it is not unreasonable to assume he was not one of the heavyweight players that made that decision. Whoever that person may be, whether a politician or civil servant. So he is, to some extent, removed from the situation. He is associated because he is a member of the PNM and MP at the time, but to say he was directly involved, we can't say that. But more importantly, he brought it up as an example of technical facts, regardless of the origin. And that's the thing. People want to poo-poo it, how we could say that. But hey, the truth in the message is the truth in the message. If you don't like what happened to Brent Thomas, then at the very least we should consider what he has to say. Again, you don't have to agree. This is juxtaposed to some extent by some of the contributions by the Minister of Legal Affairs, Saddam Hussein. So we have parts of his rebuttal, and again, MP Geet Scotland, edited for time. This is edited for time. But let's go with what Minister Saddam Hussein had to say.
Mr. Speaker, I sat here and I had to listen to my colleague from Port of Spain South. And I wondered a couple months ago if he would have had the same view. Because you see, Mr. Speaker, when they're in opposition, they say a different thing compared to when they're in government. But this government, Mr. Speaker, will call them out on their hypocrisy. We will. All of a sudden, Mr. Speaker, they discover these buzzwords like training and judicial oversight. Fairness. Democracy. What? Mr. Speaker, they knew nothing of that a few months ago. They knew nothing of that a few months ago. And then the member says, and I think the Attorney General was very pellucid when he piloted the bill by saying, there are challenges with respect to the expediency and the timeliness for police officers to get these warrants. Hence, we are introducing this amendment. And my colleague from Port of Spain South says, well, what is wrong with the masters taking time to look at the case? You know what is wrong with that, Mr. Speaker? Because the criminals are running amok in Trinidad and Tobago. Because we don't want to know about the JPs in Brent Thomas, you know. We want to know who is the minister that authorized the police officer to jump on a plane, go to Barbados and kidnap one of our citizens, abduct them and bring them back to Trinidad and Tobago without proper judicial oversight. Don't tell us about JP, tell me who was the former minister who did that. So hush him out when it comes to Brent Thomas. And my friend, Mr. Speaker, is absolutely...
48-4, please. That seems unparliamentary to me. Member. Okay, let's rephrase it.
Mr. Speaker, I move on. You have summary offences, you have indictable offences, and you have tribal either-way offences. When a JIPA was introduced, it was only to prevent a JP from granting a search warrant for indictable offences. It did not interfere with the JP's jurisdiction under the Summary Courts Act to issue warrants for summary offences. So all this fear-mongering, Mr. Speaker, a JP in this country can issue a search warrant for a summary offense. For summary offense. If the policy of the then government was that remove all of this judicial power from the JP, why they didn't do it for JPs for summary offenses? Why?
So I want to point out, it probably was very entertaining and it was a feel-good moment. Yeah, we don't want to hear nothing about the Brent Thomas thing. First of all, that would actually be more effective if they were still in opposition. But given that they're in government, they have a new commissioner of police. Technically, they're supposed to be in control of the situation in conjunction, not over, but in conjunction with the commissioner of police. So at this point, you could say, yes, there might be some people in the PNM who have the answers. But you're investigating it, right? There should be some things revealed in the investigation. If it's a black hole, then somebody is not speaking, and it's not just whatever politician was involved. Why can't you get to the bottom of it from your end? I'm not saying that you will get all the answers, but it should not be the case where you have nothing. And maybe it is the investigation is proceeding swimmingly or not. I don't know. But more importantly, the opposition MP brought up, and I get it, the government MP needs to respond to it, but he brought up the Brent Thomas thing as a practical example. And the Minister of Legal Affairs didn't necessarily discredit the example, he discredited the speaker. And then the Speaker of the House, when I say he discredited, he tried to discredit Keith Scotland. And of course, those who are biased against Keith Scotland will say, yes, you see, he on rubbish. But the Speaker of the House, he had to ask Minister Hussain to rephrase. And I just have to point out that at times it seems to be that the Speaker of the House makes the right decision, but I don't know if perhaps he is a bit too reluctant to be firmer with the government. I'll get on that in a little bit. And then notice some of the things, because the opening salvo that Saddam Hussein had, Minister Hussain, my apologies, had in that clip was more or less the opening salvo of his contributions. And it was about attacking the PNM, not about debating the points that Keith Scotland or others may have made. If you need to go after the messenger, the suggestion or implication is that you are not prepared to deal with the message. You're not prepared to deal with the arguments. It's a debate. The debate is not whether or not Keith Scotland is a man of integrity, a man that has intelligence or knowledge, or his affiliation to the PNM somehow discredits him. That's not the debate. We don't debate things like that in Parliament. We debate legislation based on the merits of the legislation. Because, and this is not the first time Minister Saddam Hussein did not fully pay attention to what was being said. He brought up the fact that the justices of the peace were able to give out warrants for summary offenses, but I believe Keith Scotland, when he said it was wrong then, referring to giving out warrants up to 2023 and 2023, and it is wrong now. And you might say, oh, maybe he's conveniently changing his opinion, he's singing different tunes. It is what it is. But can you debate the merits of his argument and not just say, well, he's wrong because they did a thing, even though part of his argument was it was wrong when they were doing it then. The status quo is wrong, if my interpretation is correct. But at the end of the day, notice how much more effective Minister Hussain sounded when he spoke to the actual case, to the point that the AG is saying that they have difficulties. Now, Keith Scotland said, what are the difficulties? And if the AG was not detailed, then it would be better for the government side to give out those details, to have practical examples, right? MP Keith Scotland was going to case law. Now, if you want to debate whether or not they should be applied as he interprets it, that's a different story. But Minister Hussain, at the end of the day, when he was debating the merits of the case, of the bill, of the arguments, then it wasn't about PNM UNC. Then it was about the business at hand. The business at hand. That is what a parliamentary debate should be. If you want to have a political debate, have a political debate show. We'll do it. I'm sure other media houses will do it. I ain't going to be greedy. You want to debate the other side? But you can't get parliamentary privilege now. Let's see who has the better facts, who has the better claims, who has the better arguments. Don't just do it on your own platforms, and don't just do it under the protection of parliamentary privilege. We could do one night a week, every media house. 2 men enter, 2 men leave, but 1 leaves a winner. If you really want to engage in a political debate like that, have a political debate. Don't play it out in Parliament, because this is what can happen when it goes too far. And this is in the same session. This is in the same session, and you would have read news about it. You may have witnessed it yourself, but I want to highlight it, to juxtapose, because to be fair, Minister Hussain did have points to make. He had good arguments to make, whether you agree with it or not. And that's what debate is. MP Keith Scotland makes points, Minister Hussain makes points. And the speaker is just there to make sure that things go properly. And he didn't have to do much in this portion, but in another portion, the conduct, Let's roll this clip.
Opposite when they point at
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Speaker,
48-6, sit down. Sit down. Sit down. Sit down. It's your nonsense. Mr. Speaker.
Okay. Leader of government business. Okay. Enough. Enough.
Mr. Speaker, hooliganism will not be accepted. I put up a standing order 48-6. Straight out.
You know, there's absolutely no need for all of this.
You may not have realized. I believe what happened was the cameras basically tried not to show the opposition MP, Karim Marcel, and the leader of government business show their conduct in full swing, right? Because here's the thing, leader of government business. At the very least, Karim Marcel, he's new to the House. He's a rookie politician. And he is not the opposition chief whip. You engaging in this back and forth with him, you're to some extent lowering yourself down to his level. And for what? Because you could see his hand is still there in the clip. He is still on his feet too. Notice that the speaker is standing. Everybody is supposed to sit down and shut up, as far as I am aware. The leader of government business doesn't have any extra rank when the speaker stands to tell someone else to sit down. Of course, Karim Marcel also is at fault. The speaker had to intervene multiple times before this period. One thing about this that I wish was different in the speaker's conduct was he wasn't wrong to tell MP Marcel what he said, but it seemed as though he did not necessarily have the capacity to properly admonish Minister Padarat, who essentially, by his actions, undermined what should be a colleague and usurped his authority by staying standing and in continuing, if Karim is wrong, to kick up a fuss while the speaker is standing. How is the leader of government business exonerated in that situation? How is he showing he is better than? He is conducting himself in the same manner. And what I'm disappointed is the speaker, and perhaps maybe he does not necessarily think he has the capacity for whatever reason to do so, was not able to fully admonish the government side as much as he did the opposition side. I think he subtly took an issue with it. But he used Mr. Marcel, who, to be fair, had cause for the speaker to stand up multiple times before now. He used Mr. Marcel as an example. But maybe he was speaking to the entire chamber. This is worthless. This is worthless. You want to come on a show, on a TV show, you want to do that? We'll give you the opportunity. You want to go somewhere else to do that? They'll probably have you too. We'll all love to have you. We'll figure it out. Come and get on like that on television. As bad as that is, technically, if you think about it, it's still better than in Parliament. And I wanted to highlight the juxtaposition of what might have been one of the better contributions and back and forths in what is actually a debate to this. Mr. Marcel, I don't know if you're being encouraged by your seniors, if you feel you need to prove yourself to some people. Be careful that you don't necessarily sacrifice yourself for someone else's agenda. Whereas Minister Padarat, I don't know why you feel the need to emulate the later years, or rather to emulate the career path of Prime Minister Stuart Young. That's what it feels like to me. You want to run straight to year 9. Not that that was a good career arc. Not that that worked out for him, but for whatever reason, you seem to be more than content going there. Why? Why is that necessary? So at the end of the day, as much as people would like it, because I think these things matter, it's not about who was right in the debate. It's the fact that MP Keith Scotland didn't go down to that level. And you have to call it out and give it the appreciation it deserves, because if you don't, regardless of if you support UNC or PNM, if it is a case where, well, he's a PNM, so he has to be wrong, why will they ever improve? Unless your goal is partisan politics. Unless you want it to always be, it's we time now and it's your time never. If that's what you want, fine, then don't jump on the bandwagon of everybody winning. Because I still think the Prime Minister means it when she says it, but I don't think everybody that wears a rising sun, I'm not talking about the politicians, I'm talking about everybody, members, supporters, everybody. I don't know if everybody means it. I don't even know if there are UNC supporters that want it. There might be some UNC supporters that, hey, they'll cheer and applaud it, but do they really want it? I don't know. I don't know. Because everybody winning means that we need to be willing to acknowledge what is right, what is wrong is wrong. What the PNM did, they did a lot of wrong. But if you don't acknowledge what they may have done right, why will they improve? And then if you just write off the second party, what is to keep the first party in check? What is to keep the first party in check? Because right now, we have someone, some people might say it, of Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, who at this point in time is acting like the Deputy Speaker. Is it that the Speaker of the House did not feel that he had the authority to rein in the leader of government business, despite the fact that he is the presiding officer? Because at the end of the day, to not admonish Minister Padarath, it does send an indicator to the opposition. A, it's unfair. And it does send an indication to the government, A, you will get preferential treatment. And I don't think that the Speaker has done anything necessarily quite as egregious in terms of intent as his predecessor. And but that's speculation on my part. I don't know what his intentions are for sure. I'm hoping that's not the case. He seems to be an agreeable man, a fair man, and a well-tempered man, but that agreeableness maybe might be where the issues start. And the thing is, if this is where we're starting with Parliament, where will we end? Are we not supposed to encourage or, if necessary, demand better from Parliament, both sides, to work together to deal with major situations? At some point, we want constitutional reform, and I don't think the government has enough of a majority, even with the TPP, to do it on their own. Will we ever see a point in time where we can see, for the good of the country, both sides of Parliament cooperate on anything? Because, and this could be lip service, but Keith Scotland did say, if it's not for this one thing, we will support this amendment. Again, it could be lip service. I don't know how true that is. Maybe that's just an excuse, and if they removed it, they'll still not support it. I don't know, but this is a game of chicken where you lost because he said, this is what we're willing to do. Will you compromise? And if the answer is no, then you can't blame the PNM because they took that one little extra half step more than you did. Who proves that they don't care are the ones that don't want to engage, that don't want to compromise. And let's tie this back to the beginning. What is this about? This is about justices of the peace giving out warrants. Why does this matter? Well, regardless of what it was before, consideration should be made on should it be allowed. Indictable offenses, warrants for that. Do we want to see that? Is it necessary? Is it because of a desire to be more aggressive and faster and more responsive to crime that the government wants to do this? And there is some merits to that argument to be more timely. I understand that. That's part of what Minister Hussain was saying. Is that the be-all and end-all? To what extent is that really an issue? And what might we be compromising or sacrificing on the back end? Because the most expedient way, this is why we go to extreme examples, is expediency. Something to prioritize in a criminal justice system above other considerations. Because what the Americans are doing is most expedient. They are expediting the process of dealing with alleged drug smugglers. Of course now, what is part of the question? Are they drug smugglers? What's the evidence of that? Can you prove that? Why don't you arrest them to put them in a court of law so you can prove that? So you can get convictions. So there is no doubt. And unfortunately, the issue with regards to giving out warrants is not too dissimilar an issue. Because if you make the standards or the burden to get the warrant too low, and I'm not entirely sure if this is what Minister Hussain said, but he said it's a low standard. I'm like, wait, hold on. Just out of context, that doesn't sound right. Do I want warrants to just have low standards? So I'm not entirely sure if that's what he meant. But in what I am saying, that's what I'm referring to in this case. If we make the situation too easy to get warrants, you see, as long as everybody acts in good faith, it's fine. But human nature is a hell of a thing. It's a hell of a thing. There's a reason why police forces around the world have safeguards against abuse by themselves. Not safeguards for the public, to prevent the public from doing anything. Yes, they have laws for that technically, but safeguards against any sort of exploitation by members, agents of the state within the criminal justice system. That's around the world. Because if we have low bars to get warrants now, potentially, and again, I don't know to what extent are justices of the peace truly, do they have the training or not? The minister, the mistake he made is he made a political argument on that thing. Oh, now they know the way trading. That's nice, regardless of what their track record was before or not. Discredit what he said. Is the training sufficient or not? That is a more effective way to win the debate. We don't know necessarily. Be upfront. Give us detailed arguments as to why what Keith Scotland said isn't so. Because, and he says fear-mongering, but this is one of those things where you don't want things to see the bad consequences before we're like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have done this. Because here's the catch. Because the Democrats didn't think this, the Republicans didn't think this through when they tried to impeach Clinton over nonsense. So when the Democrats did it to Trump, I'm like, I don't necessarily agree with it, but it says you're right. You all did it. Now you want to complain someone else is doing it? Yes, I know it's not the same people, but this is why. This is why you don't play fast and loose with the rules and then not expect it to be done back to you. You're not going to be in power forever. You leave a hole open, someone will walk through it. It could be the PRM, it could be a police officer with an axe to grind, it could be somebody else from some other party or some other stakeholder or some other agenda. So you want to take shortcuts to criminal justice? Well, the Americans taking all the shortcuts. And there are those who suspect that we have already taken those shortcuts throughout the years. And I'm not saying Keith Scotland is right. Debate what he says, not who he is. Don't debate the Balize. That's a waste of time. That's a waste of time. Let's go with this comment. Yeah. Crime has an inverse relationship to education and legal job opportunities, backward education system and a minimum wage job market. Yes, I do believe that to be somewhat true, but dealing with that is not going to solve all of it. There will always be some people that don't want to engage with society properly. They want shortcuts. Shortcut, I mean, it's kind of ironic. I'm using it in two different situations, but shortcuts will always tempt some people. In the case of the crime situation, it's not that the government is necessarily like some weak-willed evil people. It's more that, hey, there's a need, it's pressing. So the temptation is to try to solve a very dire situation. We want to do it faster because there are people suffering from it. So you might give in to a little bit of temptation to move things along, right? And maybe worry about the consequences later, although that at times could lead to very bad situations. But with criminals, they don't even think about consequences. They're just thinking, listen, life is too hard. And all of this 1% people want to exploit. We ain't all about that life. We will find our easy path. Listen, them politicians is crooks. Them businessmen is crooks. All them doctors and lawyers is crooks. Why I had to struggle through life like a worker, bee, peon, peasant? Nah, I'm going to get mine. They getting theirs, I'm going to get mine. And they don't necessarily, some of them might not even see it as wrong because the whole world is wrong. Because in some of those cases, it's not just about the poor education and job opportunities, but all of the ways that the system works against them, or they perceive it to work against them. Expectations and perspective is a hell of a thing. A lack of leadership to manage expectations and to give people perspective is one of the things that also leads to crime. Let's go with the other comment. Let's try and get it in. We know what the Army has to do to keep our land borders secure. Technically, we don't have land borders. I mean, I kind of know. Technically, we don't have land borders, so it's not that simple. We had an invasion of Venezuelans, and TPS was put in charge of locking them up while crime among the civilian population was spiraling out of control. The TPS found it easier to hold some Spanish and claim human trafficking or whatever, while the Army was eating taxpayers' food. Well, some of them were eating well off of the taxpayers, and some of them may not have been. But I think move beyond that point, it's about the fact that we're putting resources in a thing, and what is it actually doing? Army is not supposed to be a jobs program. Continuing, what is the principle for refusing to give the Army powers of arrest? Let the Army do its job of protecting our land borders, let them patrol the forests and beaches. Well, okay, so arguably, I think even the Coast Guard, it's very rare for an Army to have a mission quite like that, right? First of all, I don't think we have enough personnel to say that the Army could secure the beaches. Could they patrol the forests? Probably yes, and I've said that already, right? What is the principle for refusing to give the Army's powers of arrest? Well, technically speaking, they don't necessarily have the training to properly deal with those circumstances. Military police do, depending, but soldiers don't. An army is meant to conduct war. War is meant to be done with rules of engagement that says, if you think it's an enemy, shoot. Not if you think it's a criminal, you have to arrest them. Not what their rights are as citizens of the country. Yes, you still need to understand what war crimes are, what you can and can't do on a battlefield, but it's still very different. So to not give them the powers of arrest, if you're going to give them police training, what's the point of having an army? That's why Technically, they do have powers of arrest as citizens arrest, just by the way, that technically speaking. But that's why they do joint patrols. But even then, again, I point to, look at what the Americans are doing. If you want army people to be involved in policing matters, that is the logical extreme end result. Now, I think you can make use of defense force. As you said, yeah, first of all, powers of arrest in the sense of dealing with foreign nationals entering illegally is different to powers of arrest with actual people who are legal in the country, who are then thus afforded the protections of their rights under the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. That can be done. But this is where what Gary Griffith said, you need to, as the government, tell the military, this is your mission, we're giving you, what do you need to do it? This is the resources, figure it out, do it properly, right? To what extent are the heads of service not doing their job? We don't fully know because the previous situation had a Minister of National Security that seemingly did, well, we don't know what he did, so we are left to assume he did nothing. But the army can have roles, but no one is giving them a role. They're just there, and we're like, you're there, and help the police, and what does that mean? But you're right, I said it before, and this is where the manpower situation, you could potentially have them patrol beaches too, yes, but patrolling the forested areas, and that includes the remote beaches. The police, listen, the legal ports of entries will be where we have civilization, urban areas, etc., etc. The police could deal with that. You know, all of the yacht clubs and the Port of Spain, etc., etc. The police could deal with that. But all the illegal access points, the Coast Guard, that's why you have a whole national security apparatus. So the Coast Guard and the Army, by Joint Central Command, will figure out the responsibilities, who goes where, and obviously certain areas like mountainous forested areas near the coast, well, the Coast Guard from their ships can't really deal with that. And we're not hiring Coast Guard people to hump a sack in the bush. But why? You want to be part of the army, go do army things. Go on long-range patrols. Do some field craft. That's army things. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they want to be glorified Coast Guard officers and police officers just since they're in the regiment. They don't actually have to do those jobs, but they don't actually want to go out in the field. Heavens forbid we get invaded. Let them patrol the forests. But also, perhaps they should get more law enforcement training to deal with situations that they might come across before we say, you all do this mission. Train them properly to do the mission. Then we could have reasonable expectations of them and make use of a resource. And those that really want to do the job and believe in what they're doing and the sense of duty in the country, they'll do the job. They will do it. True soldiers want a mission, but not just a mission that matters, that means something, that they could believe in. Because it's the kind of job where they're saying, I'm willing to put my life on the line for a purpose. True soldiers will defend their country if you give them a meaningful role in that defense. And those that don't, then you question, are they real soldiers that are loyal to the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, that actually want to defend it? All right, I'm just about talked out, so we'll end there. Thanks to the commenters for providing their commentary and their points. I do appreciate bringing up patrolling the forests and I guess the beaches as well. Not just to say, chuck them with the police and let them help. I hope things don't get worse. I fear they might. Let us all try and be a part of ensuring as much as possible that it doesn't, with the understanding that there might be things outside of our control. And I'll leave with that. You could complain about a government. They're technically the policymakers. They're the ones that have to implement things, that have to oversee things. You can complain about them. That's just natural. Reasonable expectations. Not everything is within their capacity to control. That was true for the PNM. And the point that I would always make is, it's not criticizing them for what happened, but rather for managing a situation that might have challenges, but they didn't manage it well enough. And the same is true for the UNC. Don't judge them necessarily purely based on if you like the results or not, but rather dig deeper as much as is possible, and this is where transparency helps them, something that politicians from before the election, including opposition politicians of the UNC before the election, didn't necessarily understand, but this is where transparency helps you. Because that whole situation with the local government allocations, the Minister of Local Government and Rural Development is saying, no, how they were allocated, we don't agree with that, whatever, blah, blah, blah. The point is you should have led with that. The point is Minister Tanku should have potentially included that, or whatever had the allocations in it. That should have been given up to us up front, not after the fact, because after the fact sounds like an excuse. But that doesn't necessarily mean that what Minister Khadija Amin said was untrue. It's just that it would have been better if they were upfront about it. But the question is not what are the results, as much as yes, it's not like we could just say, well, they tried their best, and if they fail. But to what extent did the process of what they were doing, was the logic sound? Was the decision-making sound? Was what they tried to do to address the situation what any reasonable, sane person would do? You start from that point, and then you work your way to assessing. I still have hope that there will be some good enough nuggets in this budget to make it worth our while to improve our situation. But until we really get all the rundowns, we don't know. Things aren't looking necessarily that it's not necessarily worse. It might still be a little bit better, but for the most part, it seems more like a change in philosophies, not necessarily an improvement just yet. But let's wait and see. All right, we'll continue the conversations tomorrow. Stay safe. Don't underestimate our crime situation right now, please. I beg of you. That's one of the things that we will probably regret if we think about it. Not necessarily the murders, but the murders that happen, hopefully, just before we really start to deal with the situation, when things hopefully get solved in a stable, long-term way. If that happens, then how much regret would you have for those victims just before? Would we say, oh, that wasn't necessary? We could have avoided that at least. I don't know if too many of the country is now desensitized to murders at this point. One of the reasons why I don't follow murders every day is because I really hope to never be in that space. I don't want to pick up a paper or read an article online and read about somebody being murdered and just think, oh, well, that's a Tuesday, that's a Wednesday, that's a Thursday. Par for the course, nothing to see here, move along. But I feel as though crime now has become more of a political issue than an actual issue. Because too many people are more than willing to just ignore it. Condolences to the families in that US strike and to the murders. I don't always say these things, but That's the problem, right? At the end of the day, the results matter when stakes are this high. Be careful out there. Try and be nice so that we could see each other tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Come travel with us as we explore Diwali across the globe. Diwali is celebrated in many countries